They mocked a simple woman at the shooting range. Then her 10 shots made billionaires tremble. Some people walk into a room and command respect. Others walk in and are quietly judged. When Harper Lane first stepped onto the grounds of the Sterling Marksmanship Club, the air around her seemed to thicken. Conversations slowed, heads turned. Her boots, dusted and cracked from years of honest work, left faint prints on the polished marble floor of the lobby. The rifle slung across her back was old, its wooden stock weathered by countless seasons, its barrel carefully maintained, but showing the unmistakable signs of age. Sterling was not a place for people like her. Here, guns gleamed under glass displays, untouched by anything but professional cleaners. Members dressed in custom-tailored uniforms, their insignias stitched with golden thread. Sterling was the playground of heirs, politicians' children, and celebrities looking to sharpen their skills with hand-built weapons that cost more than most houses. Harper wore no insignia. Her uniform was a plain canvas jacket over faded jeans, and her expression was one of quiet, stubborn focus. At the registration desk, a woman with an icy smile handed Harper a clipboard without a word. The woman's eyes flicked briefly to Harper's worn clothing, then away as if to avoid catching some contagious misfortune. Harper filled out the form with steady handwriting. Name, Harper Lane. Origin, Willow Creek, County of Barrow. Weapon, Winchester Model 70, circa 1964. The woman at the desk barely concealed her smirk. Behind Harper, two young men whispered to each other. "Did you see that thing she's carrying?" one said. "Might as well bring a musket." Harper pretended not to hear. Years of growing up in a small town had taught her that silence often cut deeper than anger. She walked toward the range. The first event was a qualification round. 10 shots at targets set 50 yards away. Simple enough for anyone who had grown up hunting deer in the freezing dawns of Barrow County. Harper set her rifle carefully, adjusted the strap on her shoulder, and waited for her turn. One by one, participants stepped up, showing off their flashy rifles and even flashier skills. Applause erupted when the club favorite, a young man named Griffin Hale, hit 10 bullseyes without breaking a sweat. When Harper's name was called, a few scattered chuckles floated from the crowd. "Good luck, cowgirl," someone muttered. Ignoring them, Harper stepped up to the line. She inhaled slowly, blocked out the polished marble, the fancy clothes, the whispers, the cameras. Only the target mattered. First shot, second shot, third shot. Each bullet found its mark with almost mechanical precision. The range officer, a burly man with sharp eyes, raised his eyebrows slightly after the fifth shot. By the 10th, there was a thin, puzzled silence. Harper's groupings were tight, not perfect like Griffin's, but far above the club's average. She quietly stepped back from the line, slung her rifle back onto her shoulder, and returned to her seat without waiting for applause. There was none. Not yet. Later that afternoon in the clubhouse, the humiliation grew more deliberate. Harper sat alone at a corner table with a battered thermos of coffee. Around her, clusters of young elites toasted each other's performances, laughing loudly, dropping thinly veiled insults that floated toward her like poisonous darts. "She must have bought that rifle at a garage sale," one girl said, sipping a fluorescent cocktail. "Or dug it out of a barn," another added. Harper sipped her coffee, her face unreadable. Griffin Hale, the golden boy of Sterling, sauntered over with two friends in tow. His smile was wide, but his eyes were sharp. "You know," when he said, "it's cute that you're trying, really, but maybe you should stick to, what is it you people do? County fairs? Shooting tin cans?" His friends laughed. Harper met Griffin's gaze calmly. "Maybe," she said, "or maybe you'll find out what else I can do." The laughter faltered slightly. Griffin tilted his head, studying her. "Big talk," he said finally. "We'll see." The next rounds would not be so simple. Harper knew that. Starting tomorrow, the challenges would require not just accuracy, but speed, endurance, and tactics. Obstacle courses, moving targets, simulated field conditions. She welcomed it. She didn't come here for their approval. She came to win. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet fire burned hotter than ever. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. It started with rain. The morning sky, once clear and golden, had turned a flat, bruised gray. As Harper stood at the edge of the outdoor course, droplets of cold water slid down her jacket. Around her, competitors grumbled about their gear getting wet, about the mud that would ruin their boots. Harper tightened the strap on her rifle and said nothing. The day's events were divided into 3 sections. rapid fire, moving targets, and a tactical obstacle course that few even dared attempt. Each test demanded not only precision, but grit, something that expensive gear and private lessons could never guarantee. Before the first event, the range officer barked orders. 10 shots, moving targets, no timeouts, no excuses. Harper watched as the first few competitors took their turns. Even the most confident among them struggled. Rain blurred the sights, mud caked their polished boots, making their footing uncertain. Many cursed under their breath when shots went wide. When Harper's name was called, a few in the crowd leaned forward, eager for a spectacle. Maybe they thought she would slip, fall, embarrass herself. She didn't. Taking her position, she adjusted her stance, steady and low. Her breathing slowed to a deliberate rhythm. The signal buzzed, and the targets began to move. The first one zipped left. Harper's shot cracked the air and struck home. The second veered sharply to the right, another hit. By the fifth shot, a strange hush fell over the spectators. She wasn't just hitting the targets. She was anticipating them, leading her shots by the barest fraction of a second, as if she could predict their movement. 10 shots, 10 hits. Harper lowered her rifle, mud splattered up to her knees, but her face calm as ever. Someone clapped, a single, startled sound, quickly smothered by the silence that followed. The second trial was harder. At the far end of the grounds, a makeshift urban course had been constructed. Narrow alleys, barricades, steel drums, and swinging targets hidden behind obstacles. Competitors were judged not only by their accuracy, but by how quickly they completed the run. Griffin Hale was first. He moved like a panther through the course, firing with confident bursts. His final time, 2 minutes and 8 seconds, with 9 out of 10 targets hit. The crowd roared its approval. Harper was called next. The course was slick with rain, and her boots had no special grip, no reinforced soles like the others. Every step was a gamble. Still, she moved forward, carefully but steadily. The first 2 targets appeared and fell under her fire. She ducked low under a rusted pipe, pivoted around a wall. A slip, almost, but she caught herself, knees and palms scraping the muddy ground. Shot 3, shot 4, shot 5. Minutes dragged like hours. The mud sucked at her feet. Cold water seeped through her jacket. But Harper pressed on, her focus narrowing to a razor's edge. When she stumbled across the finish line, breathing hard, her score was announced. 10 out of 10 hits, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Not faster than Griffin, but a perfect score. Murmurs spread through the crowd. After the trials, the clubhouse was quieter than the day before. People still glanced at Harper, but now it wasn't just amusement in their eyes. It was calculation, unease. Griffin sat with his usual group, scowling into his untouched drink. Across the room, a girl with sharp cheekbones and a silver locket around her neck approached Harper's table. "You're better than you look," she said bluntly, pulling out a chair without waiting for an invitation. "Name's Isla Kane. My father runs half the board here. Don't think for a second they're going to let you win easily." Harper met her gaze. "I didn't expect easy." Isla smirked. "Good, because tomorrow's final trial, it's different. They change the course every year, and they love surprises." "What kind of surprises?" Harper asked. Isla shrugged. "The kind that make you wish you never walked through those doors." Before Harper could respond, Isla stood and walked away, heels clicking sharply against the floor. That night, Harper cleaned her rifle in silence. The room the club had assigned her was small and plain, a far cry from the luxurious suites reserved for the favored members. She didn't care. She wasn't here for comfort. Each piece of the rifle was disassembled with practiced ease. She wiped away any trace of rain, mud, or grit. As she worked, her mind replayed the day's events. Every shot, every slip, every narrowed eye that now watched her, not with amusement, but with wary resentment. They would come for her tomorrow. Not just the course. The people. Some would cheat, others would conspire. Harper welcomed it. She hadn't traveled all this way, endured all those sneers and smirks just to quit now. When she finished reassembling the rifle, she sat back, breathing slowly, the weapon across her knees. Tomorrow she would not just survive, she would win, no matter what it cost. At sunrise, they changed the rules. No announcement was made, no explanation given. Harper learned about it when she arrived at the course and saw the new setup. A vast field scattered with obstacles. Wrecked cars, broken walls, artificial hills. Targets were hidden at unknown distances. Some would move. Some would appear only once for a heartbeat. And instead of competing against the clock, two shooters would go head-to-head in real time. It wasn't fair. It wasn't supposed to be. She knew who had pushed for it. Griffin Hale stood at the far end of the field, adjusting the strap of his designer rifle, his posture casual but his eyes cold. Beside him, the head instructor, a thick-set man named Victor Shaw, read out the matchups. Name after name, pair after pair, until only two names remained. Harper Lane versus Griffin Hale, Shaw announced, his voice slicing through the morning mist. A ripple went through the gathered spectators. A murmur of excitement, of cruel anticipation. Exactly what they wanted. The rules were simple. Find and shoot as many targets as possible within 15 minutes. Each hit was worth 1 point. The shooter with the highest score would advance. If Harper lost, she would be eliminated. Griffin smiled lazily at her across the field, lifting 2 fingers in a mock salute. Harper checked her rifle one last time. Wood, steel, weight. Familiar, trusted. When the starting signal blared, they moved. Griffin sprinted forward with practiced speed, making a beeline for the nearest hill. Harper, slower but more deliberate, moved at an angle, scanning for hidden targets. The first one popped up near a rusted-out truck. Harper dropped to one knee and fired. Hit. A flash of movement, Griffin claiming his own target, echoed from the other side of the field. The game had begun. Minutes passed in a blur of rain, mud, gunfire. At one point, Harper slipped behind a crumbling wall just as Griffin's shot split the air inches from her shoulder. Not deliberate, probably, but a warning nonetheless. This wasn't just about hitting targets anymore. It was about dominance. And Griffin wasn't going to lose easily. Harper pressed on, ignoring the thudding in her ears, the sharp sting of scraped hands and knees. Another target appeared near a burned-out car. Shot, hit. Another on a ridge. Shot, hit. Somewhere to her left, Griffin cursed. A miss. It was working. While he chased speed, Harper played a different game. Precision, patience, control. With each heartbeat, she edged closer to him. With each breath, she caught up. The final seconds of the match came down to one last target. It popped up halfway between them. A small metal disc swinging wildly in the rain. Harper saw Griffin pivot toward it. She moved faster. Time slowed. She adjusted for the wind, the sway of the target, the water dripping into her eyes. Fired. Shot rang out, clean, sharp, and the target spun away, struck dead center. Griffin's shot came a heartbeat too late, whizzing harmlessly into the mud. The buzzer sounded, ending the match. Silence. The kind of silence that weighs heavier than any sound. Spectators stood frozen, the rain tapping their umbrellas like nervous fingers. Griffin straightened, his jaw tight. Victor Shaw walked slowly to the center of the field, a clipboard in hand. He looked from Griffin to Harper, his expression unreadable. Final score, he said. Griffin Hale, 9 points. Harper Lane, 10 points. For a moment, it didn't register. Then Harper heard it. A collective gasp, sharp and involuntary. She had won. Against Griffin, against their rules, against everything stacked against her. Griffin approached her, mud splattered across his expensive gear, his face pale with disbelief. For a second, Harper thought he might say something cruel. Accuse her of cheating, demand a rematch. Instead, he hesitated, and in that hesitation, something shifted. He extended his hand. Good shooting, he said, voice rough. Harper took it, not because she needed his approval, but because she had earned it. Around them, the walls of Sterling began to crack. Not visibly, but in the looks exchanged between spectators, the uncertain applause that started softly and grew louder, hesitant, then real. Harper Lane, the girl with the battered rifle and the dusty boots, was no longer just a curiosity. She was a contender. That night, Sterling Marksmanship Club felt different. Some nodded to Harper as she passed, respect dawning in their eyes. Some still looked away, unwilling to accept what had happened. But they all knew. At the bar, Isla Kane raised a glass toward Harper without saying a word. Across the room, Griffin sat alone, brooding, twisting a ring around his finger. And somewhere deep inside the polished walls of Sterling, a new story was beginning. A story not about wealth or pedigree, but about skill, determination, and something money could never buy. Harper Lane was not finished. Not yet. Tomorrow there would be a new challenge. But for the first time, she would not face it alone. Victories have consequences. The next morning, Harper woke to find a letter slipped under her door. It was not an invitation, it was a warning. Stay in your place, last chance. No signature, no name. Just those 5 words scrawled in hurried, angry handwriting. Harper folded the paper carefully and tucked it into her pocket. She had expected this. Sterling Marksmanship Club was not built for outsiders. It was built to protect the powerful, and when someone broke their unspoken rules, the walls didn't collapse quietly. They fought back. The formal ceremony for the finalists was scheduled at noon, in the grand hall lined with centuries of trophies and portraits. Harper stood near the back, deliberately avoiding the polished, towering podium where the main contenders gathered. She didn't care for speeches or applause, but when Victor Shaw stepped onto the stage and cleared his throat, Harper knew the day would not pass quietly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Shaw began, "it is tradition to recognize not just excellence but character. Skill alone is not enough to represent Sterling. One must embody its values." The words hung heavily in the air. Shaw's gaze swept the room and settled on Harper. "For this reason," he continued, voice sharp, "the board has decided to adjust the final placements. Effective immediately, all participants must undergo an additional evaluation." A low murmur ran through the crowd. Griffin Hale stiffened visibly. Isla Kane's smile faded into a tight line. It was clear. They were moving the goalposts again, hoping Harper would trip. That afternoon, under a cold sun, the additional evaluation was announced. A solo course. Timed. No referees except Victor Shaw himself. No witnesses except those who already wished Harper to fail. She was to complete a long-distance shooting run across the roughest part of the grounds. High grass, uneven terrain, and targets barely visible even with advanced optics. Optics Harper's battered rifle did not have. When her turn came, she walked silently to the starting line. Behind her, whispers rose like gnats. "She'll never see half the targets. Shouldn't even be allowed on the course. I bet she quits halfway." Harper adjusted the strap of her rifle, wiped rainwater from her eyelashes, and listened to the wind. When the signal blared, she moved. The course was a labyrinth. Tall grass clawed at her legs. Hidden pits turned every step into a risk. Targets, pale, weathered boards barely larger than a dinner plate, swayed in the breeze, some positioned at impossible distances. Harper remembered the hunts of her childhood. No clear paths, no easy shots, just patience, stillness, trust in her own senses. She slowed her breathing, knelt low, and began. One by one, the shots rang out. Not all were perfect. A few missed, by an inch, by a breath. But more often than not, the bullet found its mark. Minutes blurred into a rhythm of movement and stillness, mud and steel, wind and breath. When Harper crossed the finish line, soaked to the bone, Victor Shaw was waiting with a clipboard and a frown so deep it seemed to drag his whole face downward. "You passed," he said grudgingly. No applause, no congratulations. Just that. Later, inside the clubhouse, the mood was different. Some members still avoided looking at her. Some scowled openly. But others, quiet, observant ones, offered small nods of acknowledgement as she passed. A girl with a broken arm from the junior competition slipped her a folded note. "You made us believe." And Griffin Hale, once the embodiment of arrogance, approached her near the empty fireplace. He hesitated, hands shoved deep in his pockets. "You didn't just beat me out there," he said. "You beat all of us." Harper met his gaze, wary but curious. Griffin's mouth twisted in a half-smile. "Awkward, real." "I was an idiot," he said simply. "If you can forgive that, I'd like to train with you sometime." It wasn't a declaration of friendship. It wasn't a surrender. It was the first stone laid across the broken bridge between them. That evening, Harper sat outside under the eaves, rifle resting across her knees. Rain drummed a soft rhythm on the stone path. The world smelled of wet earth, oil, and firewood. Isla Kane appeared quietly beside her, offering a battered flask. "You shook them up," Isla said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. "They'll never admit it out loud. But you did." Harper took a sip, bitter, strong. "I didn't come here for them," she said. "I know," Isla answered. "That's why you're dangerous." For the first time since she had arrived at Sterling, Harper smiled. Small, tired, but real. Dangerous. Not because of her name. Not because of her clothes. Not because of her background. Because she refused to break. And tomorrow they would face the final challenge. A formal championship round. Broadcast to every corner of the country. Tomorrow, Harper Lane would have a chance not just to win, but to change everything. The sky was silver the day Harper Lane made history. The final competition wasn't held behind closed doors. It was public, televised, witnessed by thousands. Cameras lined the perimeter of the field. Judges from national shooting federations stood stiffly in their ceremonial uniforms. Even board members of Sterling, faces pale and lips tight, were forced to attend. There was no way to bury this match, no way to change the rules at the last minute. Today, the winner would be decided by skill alone, and everyone would see it. Competitors lined up at the starting point, their names announced one by one over loudspeakers. Griffin Hale, Isla Kane, two other finalists, both from families whose names carried weight far beyond these grounds. And Harper Lane. When her name was called, there was a momentary hesitation in the crowd, a ripple of surprise, confusion, disbelief, followed by a growing wave of applause. Not everyone clapped, but enough did. Enough to matter. Harper stepped forward, rifle slung across her back, boots heavy with mud, jacket still stained from yesterday's trial. She felt the weight of their stares. She welcomed it. The course was the most brutal Sterling had ever designed. Targets set at varying ranges, from 20 yards to over 400. Moving platforms, simulated cover fire, time sequences. Competitors would shoot in isolation, scores announced at the end. Griffin went first. From the sidelines, Harper watched him move. Fast, aggressive, confident. He missed 2 shots, cursed under his breath, corrected himself. A strong performance. Isla followed, precise, calculated. But on one of the moving stages, her foot slipped slightly, throwing off her rhythm. Another 2 missed targets. The other finalists faltered worse. Rain-slicked ground, nerves, the weight of too many expectations. When Harper's name was called, she stepped forward into the damp silence. Heart steady, breath even. She looked once at the distant hills, at the gray sky, at the impossible course, and then she began. The first shots rang out sharp and clean. Targets dropped in sequence, like notes played on a hidden instrument only Harper could hear. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. Every movement was deliberate, the product of 1,000 unseen hours in the woods of Barrow County, lining up against the breath of the earth itself. Wind shifted. She adjusted without thinking. Mud sucked at her boots. She kept her footing. When the moving platforms began to swing wildly, Harper crouched low, anchored herself, waited for the brief, perfect window, and fired. Hit, hit, hit. The course unfolded before her like a living thing, testing, tempting, trying to wear her down. But Harper Lane did not break. Not then. Not ever. When the final target shattered, the buzzer sounded. Harper lowered her rifle and stepped back, her breathing heavier now, heart hammering not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what she had done. Victor Shaw approached the podium, expression rigid. He cleared his throat. In third place, he announced Isla Kane. Muted applause. In second place, he said, Griffin Hale. Another ripple of polite clapping, and a few gasps of surprise. And in first place, Shaw's voice strained slightly, as if each word were dragged from him by force. Henri with a perfect score of 100 points out of 100. Harper Lane. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. And then, an eruption. Real applause. Cheers. Shouts of disbelief, excitement, triumph. Harper stood motionless for a moment, the reality sinking in. She had done it. Not just one. Changed the rules. Broken the old walls. Proved that skill had no price tag. Later, as she stood alone by the field's edge, watching the sun finally burn through the clouds, she heard footsteps behind her. Griffin. He stopped a few feet away, hands deep in his pockets. You deserved it, he said, voice low. Every point. Harper studied him for a moment. There was no arrogance left in his face. Just something simpler, more honest. I was wrong about you, he added. About a lot of things. Harper didn't smile, not yet. Instead, she extended her hand. It wasn't a gesture of pity or even forgiveness. It was a beginning. Griffin took it, his grip warm and solid. For the first time, it wasn't about winning or losing. It was about respect, about something built not on money or privilege, but on something far rarer, trust. Weeks later, when Harper Lane's name appeared in magazines, when she was invited to tournaments and training camps she never dared dream of, when sponsors offered deals she politely refused, she still returned often to the small firing range just outside Willow Creek, where the targets were old. The ground was rough. The wind was free. Sometimes Griffin came with her. No cameras, no crowds, just 2 shooters pushing each other to be better. Sometimes Isla Kane would visit too, laughing as she tried to best them both. And sometimes Harper stood alone, staring at the horizon, dreaming bigger than she ever had. Because for the first time in her life, she knew the world was wide, and it was hers to claim.